Hey, what's going on, y'all? Time for another out-of-this-world story from rSpace. Today's story sounds like it could be a juicy one. Longer, but totally worth it. I, 21 male, was having an affair with my boss's wife, 45 female, for 6 months, and now I'm realizing this was a huge mistake. Okay, so a bit of a backstory here. In November of 2017, I started in my first job, thanks to a person that was an inspiration to me during college, that offered me the thing, and I accepted it. Let's call him Carl. After all, I needed the money, and I was desperate for new things in my life. So I did, and at that job, with Carl being one of my 3 bosses, alongside 2 of his friends, let's call them Mike and Chad, changed my life. There, at my first day, I met her. Let's call her Amy, Chad's wife. From day 1, we began knowing each other, and developed quite an amicable relationship, but becoming very close very fast. Then, on the second week at the job, a situation happened where I had a bit of a fallout with 2 of my colleagues, and they were a bit hard on me. Carl and Amy, being the 2 bosses I was most close to at the point, took the attack on me very personally and actually called out my colleagues. At that point, according to Amy, that was the moment that she started feeling something else for me. Our relationship at the workplace was a bit weird. We were always side by side, sometimes hugged, sometimes holding hands with each other, but at every point having some form of physical contact. At first, I didn't realize it was weird, because I wasn't thinking that such contact was having an undertone whatsoever. But then I realized others were weirded out about it. It took me a while to realize that Amy might have feelings for me. I spent at least 3 to 4 months convincing myself that it wasn't the case, even when telling my friends about it, friends from school. And they were saying, "Dude, she has the hots for you." I still wasn't sure. Fast forwarding a bit to July 2018. At that point, I was still not sure if she really had feelings for me or not, but some things started to happen that I couldn't ignore anymore. There is a balcony there that if a person is on the end of it for someone to pass, you have to squeeze yourself between the balcony and the person at the end of it. Naturally, for the men in there, we would joke around and grab each other's butt or tap it as a joke. But with women, we of course were totally respectful, so there were no problems whatsoever. Well, Amy, when she decided to pass between me and the said balcony, instead of squeezing herself, she would literally rub her butt in my crotch area, and I, numbed by it, went along with it for a while. From there on, there was a lot of touch on the thighs, some ass grabbing or slapping, and some more sexually insinuating scenarios. Of course, very carefully so nobody could see or even suspect anything. At that point, I couldn't pretend it wasn't real anymore, and understood what was going on. Then came August, and with it began our relationship. One day, she invited all of us to her place for a night of drinking and play. However, I lied to everybody saying I was going to the gym first, and we all agreed to arrive together around 8:30, but in reality, I left with Amy and went to her place with her around 5:30. That day, we were together for a couple of hours, but nothing really happened. However, minutes before my coworkers arrived, she kissed me, and I was stunned. I knew it could happen, but I went into shock state because I couldn't believe it was actually really happening. That kind of screwed up my night, and I stayed a bit far from the party everyone wanted to happen. I left her place, and through the next days, I was a bit shaky around her. It all came back to normality 1 week from that day, when she called me up to go to her place afterwards, because my boss, Chad, was going for business travel, and she would stay alone for the night. I was scared, but was aware that it could happen, that we would have sex, but was still cautious about it. However, from the moment I entered her car, we started talking about how we thought of each other, the fact that we dreamed about each other, masturbated thinking about each other, and things like that. When we arrived at her place, something happened. A friend of her husband, my boss, spotted us and stopped to talk right when we were entering her building. She lied to him and said that the folks from work were coming over, but in fact, I was the only one going. I was pretty nervous and thought that she had to create an alibi that we discussed later. We got up to her apartment, lied at the couch, watched some TV, and then boom, we started kissing, fondling. Then when I realized we're both doing it, and believe me, it was amazing. Although the age difference, she has an amazing body for a 45-year-old woman. She never had kids and had started losing weight up to that point. Although she didn't really need it, but it was mostly for her self-esteem. We did it, and right afterwards, we ordered some food. But me, still worried at my friend's boss, told her to actually call some of my colleagues, even if it was just the girls, because I was scared that we might get caught. And so she did. And before they arrived, I left, taking a detour so I didn't encounter them in any way. My head was full, I couldn't think straight, and I went back to one of my best friends, who lives right on the next block from me. I told him, and he, not surprised, answered, "Well, you done effed up, huh?" We talked for an hour or two, and then I went back home, thinking of what would be on the next day. Well, things started to take off from there. I had one break day on the week, and at that day, every single week, we would meet up to have sex at my place. She was developing more and more feelings for me, every time telling me that she was only well and fine when she's with me, that she wanted to spend more time with me, etc. One important thing to notice here, her marriage to Chad, that lasts so far about 14 years, isn't on its golden days. They have had several fights, even at the workplace, have petty arguments over stupid crap, and all of that same old relationship that has been worn out. She was going through a rough phase emotionally, being a former smoker, was often smoking again, trying to deal with her anxiety, etc. She was emotionally distressed, and I became her safe spot. She, from the very start of our romantic relationship, had a bit of a bigger power between us. She would always buy me things, whether I needed it or not, as a way to please me, and I unfortunately let it happen. It kind of became a sugar mommy situation where I became her emotional support and she became my provider, and that kind of started to bug me a bit. Time went on, and around the last week of October and the first week of November of 2018, we broke up. The break happened like this. We were at my place, having sex, and all of a sudden, she said something in the likes of, "Do you think any other girl would be doing this for you?" At that point, I stopped what we were doing and started questioning why she would say something like that all of a sudden. We started a big argument, and I said a couple of things that I didn't want to at the time, but was thinking about it, in the likes of, "We should break up because this is not normal for a 21-year-old to be going through." At that point, she started crying. I felt bad, and we started hugging for about an hour. We ended up having sex again, but I was still confused, and I didn't really want it to happen, although letting it go forward. Still, we broke up, and we became a bit apart for the next weeks to come. One day, around the end of November, she went to the beach and invited me, and I, instead of refusing, accepted it. We went back to her place, and upon leaving, we started kissing and ended up back together. At that point, I was a bit disappointed with myself. Personally, I wasn't very happy with the relationship, and then I wanted out from it because I felt like we were using each other. I felt like using her because she could provide for me, whereas I didn't have to worry about money and other superficial things. But she, in her way, was putting on my soul back the weight of helping her mental and emotional state. Time went on, and on December 20th, she traveled to San Diego for New Year's Eve, and would come back on January 10th of 2019. When she came back, I felt like we were a bit disconnected from each other, and some things started to pop off, and we had a fallout. On January 20th, one of my biggest girlfriends was going to throw her birthday party, and I had completely forgotten. What a friend, I know. On the evening of January 19th, another friend of mine reminded me of that, and I went to Amy to let her know that I wouldn't be able to stay with her on the 20th. She literally looked at me and said, "You know who you want to spend your time with? Do what you want." I froze. My single reaction to that was to leave, without even telling her goodbye, even though I told her to hit me up next day, so I would try to meet her later. She didn't call, didn't text, not on Sunday, January 20th, and not even in the days following. On Monday, I was a bit stressed out about it, and a friend of mine told me to go check the psychiatrist he was going to. I was able to check with my psychiatrist on Tuesday. Let's call her Nat. And man, I bursted out. She said the first session was more to understand what was afflicting me, but goddamn, not even I think she was prepared to hear some of the things I said about my relationship with Amy. Week after week, I was feeling more and more better with myself for being able to work and reflect on my relationship with Amy, and things were going well. In February, I started hooking up with a friend of mine. Let's call her Sue. Not as a way to forget or to replace Amy. The feelings that we had for each other were there. I was just not sure if she actually liked me, and because I was with Amy, I was safe. So I didn't even care about other women. My relationship with Amy started to become more and more cold. We would stare at each other as if we wanted to speak something to one another, but would remain silent. Anytime we were alone in the room, I always left it, or would do something else, just because I didn't want to demonstrate any mixed feelings. I wasn't sure how I was feeling. I liked Amy, and felt bad that our relationship had ended on such a silly reason, but in a way, I felt like I had freed myself from something that was harming me, however. A friend of mine started working there, let's call him John, around the end of January, doing some freelance gigs, and he knew about me and Amy. I started having mixed feelings about him being there because I knew the kind of person he was. He used to cheat on his girlfriend and even went to actually having sex with another of my friend's girlfriend for a while, just because he could. He's not a bad person, however. He just did that crap, and I felt threatened for him because I was afraid of losing Amy to him, even though we weren't together anymore. He even went to tell me that if it was him, he wouldn't let her go at all. I started getting jealous all of a sudden, and then I realized I still liked her. My psychiatrist started questioning me, with reason, if I actually felt something still for Amy, or if what I was feeling was just the sensation of loss and replacement. My friend John started going more and more, and all of a sudden, he started already hanging out with the guys, while I would leave, and with Amy as well. What really bugged me is that 3 weeks ago, I was right next to Amy. She opened her messages on her iPhone, and boom, I saw his icon and his name there, with a hearted eye emoji, sent to her. That day, I got paranoid. I started thinking about all the worst case scenarios possible, and then I actually got her phone and went to see the texts. Yes, I know her password. She told me when we were together because she didn't want to hide anything from me, even though I never thought it was necessary. I unlocked her phone and was kind of underwhelmed. She texted hi to him, and he replied hi, followed by the emoji. On a sense, I was relieved, but in a way, still very jealous. Side note, those texts happened on Friday the 15th if I recall, and until today, that's the only text they ever exchanged. While all of that was going on, I was still going out with Sue. I felt something for her for a while, but never managed to do anything because I wasn't sure if she liked me too. Although she sometimes showed, I was in denial. I don't know why, but I managed to not believe people like me romantically until something big happens. We started seeing each other practically every day by the end of February, and our feelings were growing, mutually. I genuinely started caring for her, not even being able to think about Amy, for instance, at least when I was with her. Amy was not aware that I started seeing someone, but I was dumb enough to tell a couple of my coworkers. I didn't tell them knowing they might tell her, but a simple joke turned into a nightmare. Someone started yelling, asking me, "Dude, are you actually dating?" And in that moment, she entered the room. Her face was normal when I looked at her, but man oh man, when she heard that, she changed. She ignored me the entire day, pretended I wasn't there, and I was scared. I wasn't scared that she might tell someone from the workplace about us, or even tell her husband, but was kind of scared because I didn't know what she could do. Well, time started passing by, and I realized that every time someone brought up the subject of me dating, she changed her ways with me, specifically. I don't blame her at all. I wouldn't like knowing that she was seeing someone, especially if it was my friend John, so I accepted her hostility towards me at that point. However, in the past 2 weeks, we actually started treating each other nicely again. We started maintaining a normal conversation for longer. She went back to asking me how I was, how I felt, if I was okay, showing signs of affection that we didn't have for 2 months now. I started talking to Nat about those feelings, and mostly about the fact that I was afraid of relapse. I always thought a relapse could happen, but never wanted it to happen, especially because I was happy about being with Sue and wanted to continue with her, but still being conflicted about the feelings I had for Amy. Well, things started to take a turn this last Friday, March 29th. I went out with some of my friends that didn't know about my affair with Amy and told them about it. We spent 4 hours talking about it, and I kind of realized a couple of things about that relationship that I didn't want to. Sure thing, I did realize with Nat that my relationship with Amy was unsustainable and unhealthy. The fact that she used me for emotional support but wasn't really interested about how I felt, the emotional blackmail that she would do to me, saying that all she needed was me to tell her she would actually divorce to stay with me, etc. However, talking to my friends about it, they shed some new light upon those things, and I kind of took a punch in the face with the fact that I was sustaining something that was making me feel so bad. Then came Saturday, March 30th. I told Amy that I had talked to these 2 friends about us. She knows them. One of them actually works there as a freelance as well, and she wanted details, like what I had told them, what they said, etc. We started talking. I told her about the fact that I was confused, still had feelings for her, felt jealous of her, and stupid enough mentioned my friend John, but still, I was happy with Sue, and wouldn't trade her for nothing right now. She went to tell me that she still also had feelings for me. She didn't want things to have ended the way they did, and that she was happy that I was jealous of her, because that meant I liked her. We talked for a bit and reached a consensus to try to be friends again, so things could come back to normalcy. Later, she and folks from work were going to hang out, and she invited me too. I already had something planned with my friends from Friday, and told her that I would try to meet with them later, if possible. I was more inclined to go not because of her, but because John was going, and I don't know why, but at the moment I felt vulnerable by the fact that she now knew I was jealous of her with him. I went out with my friends, and afterwards in my car, we started talking that we shouldn't meet them up. I was reluctant. I wanted to go, mark my presence there, but at the same time, I didn't want to. We stayed an entire hour deciding where to go next, and I forcefully said, "Let's meet them up. F it." While driving to the place, I texted John, asking if they were still there. He answered that he didn't actually go. Instead, he went home and got tired to go out, and asked me if I wanted to meet up. I brushed off his reply, and actually got happy with it. At least I didn't have to worry about him hitting on her there. We arrived and well, I kinda got bumped about actually meeting them up. I didn't want to show her that I went because she asked me to go, but it's not like I could tell her I went because of my jealousy. We stayed there for an hour or two, and we decided to head home. Amy came to me and asked me if I could drive her home. I was afraid this would happen. I could have said no, but for some reason, I wasn't being able to pronounce the words. I tried to brush her off, but I said, okay. I tried to drop her off first because I had one of my friends in the car, the ones from Friday, but I ended up screwing the way back, and my friend asked me to drop her off first, which I did. After she got out, Amy asked me if I really wanted to drive her home, to which I replied, sure, why not? And she responded, then why were you trying to avoid dropping off C, my friend, first? I didn't want to respond, and we went both silent all the way to her place. We arrived, and then crap hit the fan. She started asking me a lot of things, to which I honestly couldn't reply. I was confused. I didn't understand well what I was feeling, and I felt vulnerable, because now she knows all of that, and I didn't want to continue the conversation at that point. Then, she started to kiss me, but in the putting her tongue deep down my throat kind of kissing. I felt like crap. I was just standing there, sitting on my seat, while she was trying to make me do something. She started going from hugging to kissing, and started questioning me whether I wasn't going to respond. Again, I told her I was confused, and I needed some time to think. Then she started confronting me about Sue. Started asking if it was easier for me to be with her, given the fact we're the same age. She's single, totally different from her. I got a bit mad at that point and asked her to get out of the car and go home, because that wasn't the time nor the place to have that discussion. Upon leaving, she told me that if I wanted, I could hit her up the next day or Monday, but if I didn't, she would understand that I didn't want anything with her anymore. I got home, parked the car, started texting my friends saying that I done effed up and that I was feeling awful. I woke up on Sunday completely drained. I was very shook by what happened and started going down towards the ground with my depression. Side note, well, I fight depression on and off for a while. I don't take medication because it has never caused me or affected me as bad as it is right now, but yeah. Sunday passed by and I didn't call Amy. However, I went to see Sue at night. We met and she looked at my face and saw I was a bit off. She asked what happened, but I didn't feel like telling her. After all, I was afraid of how she might react, knowing that I was having an affair. We stayed for a while in my car. I laid on her lap and we started talking. I ended up telling her, and for my surprise, she reacted in a way I couldn't have foreseen. She understood my situation, said she couldn't imagine how awful it was being for me, and all she asked from me is that I got things right. We stayed together for a bit more, and I went back home. At that point, I knew I had to call Amy on Monday, April Fool's, to talk, and was okay with that happening. Side note, I did not tell Sue about what happened Saturday night because I wasn't sure how she would take that information alongside the shock of knowing the entirety of it. Monday came, and I texted her. I told her I wanted to meet up to talk. However, she immediately responded, asking if she could pass by here at my house. Again, I couldn't respond no, so I just sent with, I guess. She arrived, we went to my room, she sat in one end of my bed, and I on the other, and started talking. Again, I was telling her that I liked Sue. Nothing would make me change my mind, but I wanted to resolve my feelings for her, still not knowing how to do it. She again started asking me if the problem was the fact that she was married, and that could no longer be a problem. For a while, I started to notice that she would use the argument that if her marriage was getting in our way, she would divorce to be with me, and I never wanted that. I even went to tell her that, if for some reason she would divorce because of me, I wouldn't take that, and we should not be together, because I sincerely didn't want to be the cause of a breakup. Recently, she started going to a shrink as well, and told me that she has started working on her problems, and has realized her marriage isn't okay. Now she says if they split, of course it wouldn't be because of me, but because she wasn't able to continue with that relationship anymore. We started discussing things, and then she asked if we could just lay in bed, one next to the other. Stupid enough, I said okay, and from then on, I effed up. We started kissing, fondling, all of that crap, all over again, and we of course had sex. We did it, and when it ended, I was kind of disgusted with myself. She even asked me if I regretted what happened. I wasn't sure. I was disappointed with myself for allowing that to happen, and that fear of that relapse was real. And now I understood it. Relapses are not a joke, let me tell you. I was already not feeling well with myself, and that was the icing on the cake. We stayed in my bed for a little while, but I, feeling disgusted with myself, created a situation for her to leave. Before leaving, we started talking a bit more, and she just started talking things that started messing with my mind. She was often saying how we should be together, I shouldn't be with Sue, but then escalated it to a point where she started saying that if we didn't get back together, okay, she would suffer, and might take her some time, but eventually she would forget me. She even said that it would be hard, but of course it wouldn't be with Chad that she would forget me. At that point, I started to really point out that I had an appointment and I had to leave, so we did. She went to meet with C, my friend that was aware of our affair, because C is also going through some stuff, and they went to talk. I spent the entire Monday thinking whether or not I should tell my friends about what happened, but I didn't. Then came yesterday. Amy texted me good morning, just the way she did when we were together. At that moment, I started panicking a bit. It was almost a deja vu. I was afraid of having to live that thing over and over again, but was glad that later I had my appointment with Nat, and afterwards was going to see Sue. I tried to maintain appearances at work, even though Amy wasn't there, but everyone kind of realized I was a bit down, and were asking what was going on, but I didn't answer. I finally went to see Nat and told her everything that happened since our last session. She was in a bit of awe, but mostly she was a bit bugged by the fact that I had to go through that to realize the abusive relationship I was having. We talked, and I felt a bit relieved, however, still a bit afraid of how to definitively end things with Amy. Then I went to call Sue. I asked her at what time I could drop by her place to pick her up, and she was brushing me off. I was afraid to ask, but I did, and of course, she was confused about my situation as well. She suggested for us to take a break until I get my crap together, me saying this, because she doesn't want to be in a situation where she feels used, and I get that. In any moment, I would want that. And I also started thinking about that, and that was hurting me as well. I didn't want to be with her just for her to become a replacement for Amy. After all, I was developing real feelings for her. However, I started thinking if that wouldn't be the case, accidentally. So we talked for a bit more, decided to stay apart for now, and that kind of struck me. Angry as I was, I tweeted about it, even though Amy sees everything I post. I tweeted about the fact that I was losing a good thing in my life because of my stupidity, and oh boy, she got mad. She texted me, saying that she was really enjoying the show I was putting up. My sole response was, I sincerely don't have the strength to do this right now. I was feeling like crap and still am. I called up my friends, C and P, the ones from Friday. We met up and started talking. C told me that when she went out with Amy on Monday, they talked a lot, and she even tried to convince Amy to break up with me, but failed to do so. She was also a bit surprised that I waited a day to tell them about Monday, even though she knew already, because she could only imagine the things were going through my mind. We stayed talking for a couple of hours, and I then, again, got hit in the face by the truth and realized that I have to put an end to my relationship with Amy. I know what many of you might say, because I've heard it from my friends, but still, I would like your advice, fellow Redditors. I'm still confused. I want to end things with her. I want to go back to normalcy, but I feel trapped. I feel like I have no real strength to do so, and I'm afraid that if I try, she will seduce me again and continue to mess with my emotions and feelings. Help me. No comments for me to read until you wonderful fans respond below. Look forward to reading them.